Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sound Solutions podcast by MusicWorks, a hub for music therapists to discover solutions for their personal wellness and professional practice. Explore continuing education, webinars, and other professional development resources on musictherapyandwellnesshub.com. That's musictherapyandwellnesshub.com. You can listen to more episodes of the Sound Solutions podcast on SoundCloud or on iTunes. All right, so I have on the line with me Tim Ringgold, who is a fellow music therapist, an amazing colleague, and welcome to the Sound Solutions podcast, Tim.
Thanks for having me, Angela.
I just wanted to ask you first, as we start off, why did you become a music therapist?
I would have to say that the reason I became a music therapist was when I first discovered it. It was on Arizona State University's website, and they had, it's a major there, and they had two paragraphs. And the first paragraph read, type of work music therapist does. And the second paragraph was the type of person a music therapist was. And the first paragraph read like my dream job, and the second paragraph read like an autobiography. And so I could finally get a degree in being myself. That's really when I first discovered music therapy. That's what I thought. I was like, oh, this is what I want to do with music all the time. This is what I do with my own music all the time already. Sweet. Here's a structure in which I can heal and help with music, but in a much more professional, reputable industry than the music industry. And I can be at work during the same hours as my wife, and then home in the evenings and on the weekends, and not touring. Mm-hmm. And so wanting to have, we already had, we were already married, and we were already planning on having a family. And the last thing I wanted to do was be a traveling musician. So the idea of being able to help people on a daily basis as my day job was amazing, because prior to that, I was a musician in the evenings, and my day job had nothing to do with music, and I was always miserable. So it was like best of both worlds.
So as music therapists, of course, we use music in our work, in our regular job, which is amazing because that's what we love to do. But also it can be difficult to have that personal relationship with music outside of work. So how do you use music for yourself now as a music therapist?
Well, I am 11 years in as a music therapist, and that has evolved as my lifestyle has evolved, particularly around kids. There have been times where I was doing no music other than music at work. There have been times when I did music at home, like for my kids or for my wife, like when we were pregnant. And I was kind of using music still as a tool, but in the house. And there came a point where I was like, all right, I'll write a song or two, and, a song will come here and there, but without like deadlines and other people holding me accountable for producing new material, I don't tend to produce new material. So my songwriting has just kind of ebbed and flowed. Every once in a while a new song comes out, not too frequently. And then recently I recognized the absence of music in my life, and I also recognized that there were two things that were missing for me. One was accountability and community. The other was community. And so without that, no music. Mm-hmm. Right. So I created a 40-day of play challenge, and I started it for myself, and then I put it out on Facebook to people to see if they wanted to do it. And I actually included it as the last chapter of my book, because I want people to engage with music after reading the book. I don't want them to just read the book. That's not the point of the book. So once I kind of almost made it homework, it was very funny because it didn't occur like homework. Like I work out, and it doesn't occur like homework to work out. Mm-hmm. And I thought, why don't I work out musically? Why don't I have a workout routine musically? I have a workout routine physically. And I just laughed oh, that's really interesting. I don't have one. I used to have one when I was a student, right? I would practice 4 times a week, 15 minutes per instrument. And but that's because I had accountability and community. I had, right? You had your private lesson with your teacher, and if you didn't practice, it was the longest 30 minutes of your life.
True.
And then there was master class, right? So you had to perform in front of your peers in master class. And so that was what kept me, playing on a regular basis. And so the 40-day of play challenge just kind of created, I had made up the accountability and the community, and that got me playing again.
Yeah.
And it was very funny. Like the goal was only 10 minutes or more play with music, and it could be actually making music myself on instruments, or it could be intentionally listening to music, where the music, actively listening to music as opposed to, multitasking to music. So that's been great, because if I give myself small enough windows of time, then my brain will buy in, like, oh yeah, I could do that for 10 minutes.
Yeah. So tell us a little about your book too. I'm really interested to hear.
Sure. The book called Sonic Recovery: Harness the Power of Music to Stay Sober. And it's the culmination of 10 years of working in pain and mental health and addiction circles. And sober for me is an acronym. So it means stay present, open up, be creative, escape stress, and reconnect. And those are really the goals that I work on with my clients who are in residential treatment today for addiction, depression, anxiety, self-harm. And if anybody can accomplish any of those, that's healthy. And so the book is designed for people who are struggling with addiction. It's kind of targeted at addiction specifically, but it really applies to mental health because they go hand in hand. People who have addiction typically have mental health, and they're medicating their mental health issues with addiction. That's how it all starts. So, and that includes trauma in the list as well. So the book kind of walks you through, like, the sober acronym, like why music, and then how, like what are the 4 ways, what's the process, what are the 4 ways to interact with it. We make it, we listen to it, we write it, and we relax to it. So the book just gives you examples on how to do that, and then issues the challenge at the end. Like,
what role does music play in, when you're working with these different populations?
Well, music's a powerful tool because all of my clients trust it more than the staff that is working with them. So that's really the key piece of it, is we all have a very personal relationship with music. And so my clients may not know me, but they know music. And so I kind of leverage that relationship. And that's the bridge. That's where we immediately connect. And these are clients who have trust issues, and they've been hurt, and they don't really trust people. And so I actually tell them, don't worry. You don't need to. You can trust music. The beat is authentic. The beat is honest. The beat doesn't talk smack about you. It doesn't judge you for not being able to keep it. It doesn't scold you for not, meeting it at 7 p.m. like you said you were going to. The beat is very forgiving. It's just the beat. So connect with the beat. Whatever music you listen to, I don't really, have an opinion on styles. I do have an opinion on the lyrics, but style, there's a beat to follow in any style of music. So connect with that beat, connect with something outside of yourself, and that's a good place to start.
So I was really interested in hearing about how other music therapists use music for their own self-care, because I know from personal experience, and then just from talking to friends and colleagues, that, after going through a 4-year music degree program where we have that rigor and routine and music as our work, and then now being sort of in the beginning years of my professional career as a music therapist, that it's so easy to get burnt out on music. And at the end of a long day, maybe I've been at the hospital playing guitar for 6 hours, and I just don't want to listen to any music or play any music by the end of the day. And so I was curious to know if my experience is unique or if other people were experiencing this. And actually posted on Facebook, on a music therapist Facebook group about this topic and just opened the question for people to respond. And I got some really interesting responses that I kind of wanted to share with you. So a lot of people commented on this post, and then I looked at them and I read through them and I organized it into different topics. So there's performing. There's a lot of folks who use music in performance outside of their work, maybe learning a new instrument. A lot of people talked about burnout. And then some people talked about music, self-care, and boundaries. So some of the responses I can share. A music therapy intern says, I'm involved in my local college's orchestra, and I also play piano for myself, and I make my own random music digitally and mess around with GarageBand. Another music therapist says that they joined a community band so that she can keep playing her flute, and she missed doing music just for her. One of the music therapists said, I have certain songs that I refuse to use with my patient. Those songs are for me and my needs. I also actively try only to use music in my home and car that I don't use with patients. Is that something that you do? Do you have any boundaries that you have with your music versus your client's music?
That's a really good question. I don't use a lot of recorded music with my clients, so that allows me to not have to cross that boundary. I'm thinking about the songs that I use that's recorded music with my clients aren't necessarily songs that come from my own greatest hits playlists. A couple of them do. They cross over, but most of them don't. Most of them were picked out specifically for themes or topics inside of therapy and not for my own aesthetic pleasure. And that's actually helped a lot, because when I share the songs, I share them from that perspective. I tell people I don't really have an opinion about these songs aesthetically. The songs are about the therapy, and it kind of takes the, people's, whether they like it or not, like the critic, it takes the critic out of the picture. And then if they don't like it, they don't have to feel bad about me. But I have heard that from other people also, that they don't want to use songs that are quote unquote theirs. And I can completely appreciate that. In a related way, my exercise playlist, I only listen to my exercise playlist when I'm exercising. It's contextual, and because I want it to cue a specific response. I think for me, that's really what it's about, is that I want the music to be contextual. And since there's a universe, not even an ocean, but a universe of recorded music out there, it's not even an issue to go find other music besides what I like to use in groups. Because every single week, clients tell me about a band I've never heard of. Right? I mean, literally every single week. I mean, there's no way you can possibly get to the finish line or the other end of the pool, whatever the metaphor is with music. So, have a boundary, because there's plenty of music out there to use that, you don't need to use your own music if you don't want to. Yeah.
In a kind of similar vein, I know that in music therapy, we often use a lot of patient-preferred music in the sessions, or client-preferred music. And you kind of touched on this. Are there situations in which you want to use non-preferred music? And how would you use that?
Yeah, so in my work in rehab settings, for where I am in my treatment settings, so I'll say, I used to work in the hospital with pain patients and anxiety patients who were in medical. So they had cancer, they had pain or anxiety from their diagnosis, and we would use their preferred music in those settings to treat their pain or anxiety in that moment. In rehab settings, patients aren't presenting with symptoms that I'm trying to treat. It's a completely different paradigm. So I'm not there to make them feel better. I'm there to get them to a particular place in their treatment, to uncover something or to learn something either about themselves or about, best practices in treatment or in therapy. A lot of the work I do is psychoeducational in the residential treatment setting, because we're really trying to educate people on wellness, best practices for healthy living, better coping skills. We're trying to upgrade their coping skills. So it's a different paradigm. So I'm not really there to make them feel better emotionally, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's say this week we're talking about the topic of influence, right? Because social influence is a unconscious power that we all are subject to, and we all subject others to subconsciously. It's not up for debate. It's not a choice. Everybody influences everybody else automatically, non-verbally, all the time. So to have to share that with people and uncover that can seem really heavy-handed and almost like a lecture if you try to tell people that, like, you are under the influence of other people all the time and you influence people. Like, shut up. Nobody wants to listen to that. But what we'll do is we'll take songs that have the theme of influence in the songs in different ways, and we'll listen to the songs, and I'll just ask the group, where do you hear the topic of influence show up in this song? Mm-hmm. And leave it there. And now they're chewing on the song, and they're doing the detective work on influence, not me. And so they start to see, okay, so is that like personal, or is that more cultural, societal, media? Like, what level is that? And then they start seeing the connections that influence happens at the level of culture, society, media. And then the next song might be really personal. Like, it's a song like about an overbearing parent. And they're like, whoa, and so there's like all different ways but they'll be the ones digging in. But the music itself is just the conduit to the discussion about influence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So the preferred music is not the priority. It's the lyrical content, the intention of the music.
Yeah, it's the lyrical content as it relates to a topic that's, germane to therapy and recovery in this setting. And so, because a lot of their preferred music is actually triggering, and a lot of it has really unhealthy lyrics. So that glorify, sex, drugs, and violence.
And it could be paired with some past memories of things that trigger certain behaviors or patterns.
Yep. And we'll talk about that in group, but I don't let the kids pick a song. Like, I know some music therapists will like pick a song that you like and we'll listen to it and tell us why you like it. Great. You know who else does that? Like, half the therapists that aren't music therapists, because that's really low hanging fruit. So I don't do that because that's almost obvious. That's not what I spent 4 years learning how to do. So I go for the active music making, the clinical improvisation, facilitating that. And I go for deeper discussions into, topics using the music and doing guided meditations and relaxations to live music, doing some songwriting. But just tell me a song you like and why. For me, they're getting that already a lot of the time from other people on the treatment team. So what did I learn that no one else on the treatment team knows how to do? So that's that's what I come in with. And I might explain to them that, listen, you're going to have to take a break from your playlist that you listen to most often during your tailspin, because there are strong neuroassociations to that playlist right now. And if we hooked you up to an MRI machine or to an fMRI machine, we would see that those songs would trigger cravings. And right now, you do not want to trigger cravings because you don't have any coping skills to replace using. Yeah. So your brain's just going to say, use. So right now, in early recovery, we really want to be really gentle about triggering anything. So all I can do is encourage you to set that playlist aside for a while, knowing that you can probably come back to it later, because that's what I did. Early in my own recovery from addiction, I could not listen to EDM at all because within about 4 beats of that, my veins were pulsing. It was like a physical reaction in my body. My heart rate would speed up. And so I had to put that style of music away for a few years. I'm happy to report now I can listen to it all day long and it doesn't have that same reaction. So that neuroassociation was broken over time. So there's hope for that.
Yeah. Do you ever use any songs that you have written for yourself with your clients? Because I know music therapists have different opinions on this. Some people want their songs to just be for them, and other people.
Yeah, I have songs. I have songs that are relevant, and I have songs that aren't. So the songs that are relevant, I do share. Because I feel like I'm bringing in a really authentic, vulnerable piece to the group. In terms of like bringing in something, just bringing in a piece of vulnerability to the session, which kind of creates a vulnerability vacuum. You know, if I lead first, then they most often reciprocate. And and I know, you know, every music therapist and every therapist gets to decide on their own, you know, how vulnerable they're going to be in group. What are they going to disclose? What aren't they going to disclose? That's for everybody to decide for themselves. Me, I'm an open book because I want people to know about my recovery story, because I know for me as someone in recovery, it's really important to meet people who are in recovery, because in the recovery community, there's this whole thing about anonymity. So you don't know how many success stories are walking around. There are so many thousands of people who have recovered, and they're not talking about it because of the 12 traditions of the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. So it doesn't seem like there's a lot of role models or mentors or hope. So all you meet, if you're a client, is other people who have relapsed and other people who are still using. You don't really find yourself unless you get to a meeting that's got old timers in it. If all your therapists are a closed book, you don't know who's got recovery or is just talking from a textbook or talking from theory. And so I like to share. And in my music's more vulnerable than I am. So when they read my lyrics, they're like, oh my God, you know, bro, this is really powerful. And, you know, I think it's important for people to write, like, think about the songs they're writing in terms of like being strong, you know, well written, well performed, you know, don't, you know, just, I think that goes without saying, but I think sometimes, you know, it needs to be reiterated that you need to really be strong on your instruments. The stronger you are on your instruments, the more, you know, respect you get. So, you know, the biggest compliments I get when I share my songs is people will say, bro, is that on iTunes? And I'll be like, no, that's just for you. And they're like, really? I was like, yeah, I pretty much only perform my songs in group for the group. And that may change, but right now that's the only place I said, because it's for you. And he's like, yeah, but man, there are like guys out there like me, like I need this song. Like I would listen to this song every day back home. Wow. That's really cool. Yeah. All right. Then we're doing good work here.
Yeah. So having a certain level of vulnerability and self-disclosure has allowed you to deepen your relationships with your clients and given them maybe a little bit more of a comfort to be open and vulnerable with you as a therapist.
That works for me. I don't know how it works for anybody else, and it doesn't have to work for anybody else. You know, I think it's just important for everybody to feel congruent with whatever their decision is.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The very first day someone asked me in one of these groups if I was in recovery, I said no. And the reality was I wasn't ready for the question. I hadn't actually talked about it with my sponsor about like, what should I say if someone asks me, what should I say? Like, I'd never had the conversation. We never talked about it. So there I am in group one day, and one of the teens just says, hey, are you in recovery? And I was like, no. And then it felt wrong for me instantly. I was just like, oh, you know what? That wasn't it. Huh. So I actually called my sponsor and I said, you know, that wasn't it. Like, this is what happened. This is what I said, and that didn't feel right. But I also don't want to be an open book in terms of talking about the details of my own addiction. I just want there's got to be a middle road. So we kind of figured out that, like, for me, what I share with people is, I walked into my first 12-step meeting on February 17th, 2003. So this isn't theory for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like my statement. And then people are like, oh, because two things happen in that moment. One, they hear I'm in recovery. Two, they hear 2003. That's a long time ago in the recovery timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So, 16 years ago to walk into a 12-step meeting, that means, oh, this guy's been around recovery. Well, with the teen, longer than I've been alive, or as long as I've been alive, he's been in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it's an adult, they're like, this guy's been in recovery longer than I've used. So he's not somebody who's fresh in recovery. Yeah. This is an old timer. So now I'm going to get actually more out of this session because he's walking in as a clinician and it's an old timer. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need to be an old timer to be a good clinician. But for me, it would be pointless to be an old timer and not have them know that,
mm-hmm.
because that contributes to them. It doesn't contribute to me. It contributes to them.
Yeah, absolutely. You're always remaining client focused, and how you disclose is going to help the patients or the clients.
Yeah. Russell Hilliard said it best. He said, if you're disclosing for you, you're disclosing for the wrong reason. If you're disclosing for them, you're disclosing for the right reason. And I was like, that's pretty spot on.
Yeah, so I know that you mentioned that certain music was really triggering for you before. And how has music been a part of your recovery and a part of your journey?
Yeah, that's a good question. In the worst moments, when I couldn't stand to hear my voice any longer say the same things over again and over again about mistakes I had made, I found that my guitar was more effective than my voice. If I in my darkest moments of sadness or depression or upset, when I would grab my guitar and start playing my guitar, that's when I could express, which means squeeze out. That's the literal definition of express, which is important for therapists to understand. I could literally squeeze out that emotion through my guitar. And for me, language is often a toll booth, and it actually gets in the way. It's not the right conduit for me to express my emotions. My guitar is actually, when times are really tough, my guitar is the best tool I've got. And so I'm very grateful that I have that extra gear, I can, if things are mild to moderate, I can talk about stuff, but when things are serious, I need I need one of my guitars in my hand. And then it's funny, the guitar and my hands, they just know what to do and what to play, what needs to come out. And, it's usually not a cover song. It's usually, something either I've already written or spontaneously just start, improvising. More often than not, it's spontaneous improvisation. And then it's out. And then I don't have to talk about it. It's out, And so, job done. Almost like a workout. When you work out and you feel better emotionally and you don't even know why. I feel like that's what my guitar does for me. And that's what just jamming does for me. Anybody who doesn't feel comfortable jamming on their instrument, I really encourage them to just spend more time jamming. Just jam, just jam, just jam. Don't read, don't write, just jam. And the more you do it, the more fluid it becomes, the less mechanical it becomes. And for me, that's how I started. I was self-taught on guitar, and I play by ear. And so learning to read music with my eyeballs was really counterintuitive. So for those who are classically trained, who started by learning to read with their eyeballs, in school at least, it was really hard for a lot of my classically trained classmates to jam. Because they had never generated the music themselves. They were used to reproducing the music that was already on a page. And so I think it's really important to be able to just get in touch with the music that's inside and letting it out. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. It's not a talent issue. It's just a timeline.
Allowing,
It's just
right?
Yeah, it's just an exposure issue. The more you're exposed to it, the more fluid it becomes, and the easier it gets out.
Yeah, well, I can definitely relate to that. I think when I first started working full time as a music therapist, I was just full into my job. Like, work was being my entire life, and I loved it. Like, I love my job. But then after a few months, I was getting pretty exhausted. And then I started to jam with coworkers and friends. And even after a really long day, and I'm emotionally and physically exhausted, that was so re-energizing for me to be able to get together with people and just make music and have fun and not really be overthinking everything and not thinking about composing or not thinking about, music therapy, but just enjoying music. It was so important.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference between work and play, like the verbs. And so, it's really important to understand the difference for when you're working music and when you're playing music. Because as music therapists, we definitely work music. And as a professional musician, you may be working music during your rehearsal. But for me, it's the music therapy pegboard, like the shape on the pegboard is unique because you're juggling so many things in your head during a session.
Oh, yeah.
So it's so multidimensional. For me, it's so much more than music performance ever was in terms of like what I'm trying to manage. And so playing music, where you're just jamming, for example, like that's my thing, is like, it's like a relief. It's like a spa day for my head. I'm not thinking when I'm jamming. It's like, what key? All right, ready, go. And that's about it. After that, it's just, and just, turning off the thinking part and the working part and turning on the playing part. Play is really, really restorative. The word recreation, we should not overlook the word recreation, what it actually comes from, recreation, right? So that's really important. And as adults, we organize our activity around work, right? We go to work, we work out. They train us in school with homework and schoolwork. We get automatized quickly, and then we take time off from work and go to workshops. It's housework, yard work.
Yes.
That's it. It's to be an adult is to work, and to be a kid is to play. And if you want to insult somebody, call their work child's play.
Yeah.
Oh
my God. Yeah.
Right? So, but we need play, and we know we need play, and mammals need play. And in fact, I read a great book called Play, literally, by Dr. Stuart Brown. I highly recommend it to anybody who's a music therapist, because you started playing music and then you started working music. And if you don't remember what it was like to play music, you need to get back in touch with that field of play. Really super important, because working music is not restorative. That's what leads to burnout. Playing music is restorative. So then the question is, well, what's the difference, right? And the difference is that, what are the ends? Like, what are you working towards? When you're playing, you're not working towards anything. You're just being in the moment. You're being musical. You're musicking as a verb. I can't believe I just said that out loud. But you literally, you're just expressing. You are present in the moment, connecting through meter, rhythm, key, harmony, melody. You're using all these bridges to connect with something outside of yourself in order to do nothing. In order to get nowhere. And that's really a powerful place to be musically, is to be musical while trying to get nowhere and trying to do nothing. And anyone who's never done that, they may be like, what is he even talking about right now? But anyone who's jammed and been in a jam circle before, where you're just in the middle of something and you don't really know where you're going, but you're along for the ride, you're going, and you're like, cool, we're here. This is where we are. We're in A.
Yeah.
And this is cool. Like that. And you can do that, by yourself. You can do it along with recorded music. You can do it with others live. If you're a music therapist and you've never been to a community drum circle or a community uke circle, go. Go do that. Go experience that, and find ways to play again, because you need play.
Yeah, some of the other responses on the Facebook comment, Mariana Sokol said, "I decompress from stressful days by writing or improvising on whatever instrument feels right that day, but I do it all by myself. I find the feeling of creating something new just for me is a good stress reliever."
Nice.
And let's see, Malia Levin says, "I absolutely still love to sing and play when I can. That being said, an hour or two after working, I enjoy as much silence as I can to recharge."
Yes.
Yeah, and
I agree.
There's another music therapist who said, after doing 2 to 4 music therapy groups a day, I just have no desire to play music for myself anymore. I still like to go see live music, but I can't tell you the last time I played for myself.
There you go.
That's such a common trend.
Yeah, it is. And I know that I stopped listening to music in the car when I became a music therapy student. And I remember, because music became too stimulating. And it was like I could no longer just pretend it was in the background. And so if I'm not listening to an audiobook, it's silence. Or a podcast, And it's funny, I'm that adult that I swore I would never be, because 20 years ago it was talk radio.
Yeah.
But now I'm more educated than that. It's podcasts and audiobooks. It's still people talking instead of singing. It's the same thing. But I'm wielding music, during the day. I totally can appreciate that. And, for those of you who have smartphones or tablets, like, Launchpad, people, go download Launchpad for free. It's free. It's a DJ app where you press buttons and loops play, and all of them are designed to go together. So there's no wrong notes, no wrong beats. You can't sound bad, and you can play any subgenre of electronic music in the world on this app, and no one has to hear it but you in your earbuds. And when I was doing the 40 days of play, a lot of times I was too tired to go back down to the studio to pick up an instrument, and I would just pull out my iPad or my phone and put in my earbuds, and I'd set a timer for 11 minutes on the same device, and I would just start playing in Launchpad. And within about 3 or 4 minutes, I was so far down the rabbit hole of some cool, funky loops jam thing that I had just invented and don't know how I got there. And then the alarm would go off, and I'd be like, whoa, I'm in a completely different place. And it was 11 minutes. And so I think the other myth to dispel is that it takes a lot of time. You don't need hours. You can go down the rabbit hole pretty quickly. So I really encourage people to check out what your phone can offer you in terms of virtual instruments and relaxation apps. In fact, in my mailing list, I send out a video every month of a demo of a different virtual instrument, or which is an app, or relaxation app that people can use, which is very, very cool, because they're really high quality. And I don't think we truly appreciate just what a miracle these smartphones and tablets are, because of what they can recreate today versus when we listened to samples of audio 20 years ago, it sounded like crap. And now today it's phenomenal. So, GarageBand as well. That's another one where you can go in and just noodle around on virtual instruments for iOS GarageBand and play. And it's phenomenal. You sound great. And no one else can hear you, and you're not, tuning up an instrument. You're not learning an instrument. You're pressing buttons, or you're drawing circles on your phone, and you're successful at it, and it sounds really good, really fast.
I think it's interesting how us as music therapists, we know and understand how music can take a person from one place to the next, and how we use music to change the trajectory of someone's mood or their perception of pain or anxiety in a short period of time, like a 30-minute group or an hour-long group. And I think we kind of forget that we can do that for ourselves too.
Yep.
Right?
Totally. That's totally it. It's, the do as I say, not as I do. It's a classic thing that healthcare, people in helping professions, not just music therapists, but people in helping professions suffer from this across the board because they're dishing this out all day on the clock, and then they think, oh, there's no time or energy left for me. And my thing is a little bit also, like, now that I've gotten back into just doing it a little bit, there's this one thought, which is, if I can't put in 10 minutes for me, why am I putting in 5 hours for others? What is this for? Like, this was for me first. Like, music was for me first. I was a musician for me first. So if it's no longer for me, like, I don't know, like, I might stop short of calling it a codependent thing, but, like, why am I doing this for you if it's not for me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Does that make sense? Like, why would you get into music therapy in the first place if you didn't already love music?
Yeah, absolutely. It's
So
like if you go
music?
there's a gym coach or a doctor or someone that doesn't like work out for themselves,
Exactly.
Imagine having a gym coach that is like totally not fit at all, and they're telling you to do all these burpees and lifting weights, and you're like, why do I have to do this? Yeah.
Or a yoga teacher who can't, do a pose they tell you for you to get in. Oh, well, I do it all day, so I don't do it for myself anymore, so now I don't do it at all. I don't know. Perhaps that's a little, over the top, but I do think it is important for us to just remember, hey, this was for me first. Music was a gift to me first. And if it's no longer a gift to me, then that I need to do something about that. I can't just accept that that's the way it is. That's not cool, because it's not that hard. This is the point. It's not that hard to have a practice, right? So don't compare your music practice to anybody else's practice, right? I don't compare my workout practice to anybody else's workout practice. So don't compare your music practice to anybody else's, but have one. Have one. Just don't be content with not playing anymore, because you will find yourself dull and boring to the people you serve. Because if you stop playing, then, like, what's the point in this whole thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's definitely a hard hurdle to overcome, if you are feeling burnt out on music. And, this is an important conversation to have, because music therapy as a profession has difficulty with retention, and folks get burnout really easily and become disenchanted with the whole field. And that's sad, because people who become music therapists come in because they're passionate about it, not because they're like, oh, like, maybe I can make some money with this. No, they like, you're not going to make that much money with it.
Right.
People want to help others, and people are excited about music and the power of music. And so, if we forget that, it's pretty sad. And, we're not able to serve our clients and our patients to the best that we can.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I don't mean to come off like hard-headed about it. It's just that, it is vital, because if you don't practice self-care, no one's going to practice it for you. Sometimes it's just important for people to also, like, kind of just, I don't know how to put it without, it's hard for me, because I want to encourage people. I don't want to squash them, but I also want to challenge people to be like, look, it is on you, because these are the things that we have to say to clients. Like, listen, you are taking responsibility for your well-being. You're taking responsibility for making healthy decisions. You're taking your responsibility to make healthy choices. Well, then I guess we have to look in the mirror and do the same thing. So, like, where can you start?
It's a little bit of a tough love, discussion that we're having, but I think it all comes back to recognizing how important our work is, and how important it is for us to serve our clients and our patients to the best that we can. We, like I said before, we came into this profession because we're passionate about this, and it's a fascinating field to be in. And we're in the business of making an impact on people's lives. So we're not serving folks if we're burnt out, if we're exhausted, if we're just trying to get through the day. We really need to step up and serve ourselves so that we can serve others. And I know there's a lot of music therapists out there who might feel pretty isolated. Like for me, I feel very lucky because I get to work with a team of 6 other music therapists.
Wow.
And that's a very unique situation. But there's a lot of folks out there who are spearheading music therapy in places where there's not as many services available, which is awesome. But it can also lead to people feeling pretty isolated. So, that's one of the reasons that we're doing these podcasts, and we have the hub, and why I always encourage people to go to conferences, because like you said, the community and accountability is so important for us.
Yes.
We try and provide that and facilitate that for our patients and our clients. So we also need, as humans, we need to be in community with people. And for us as music therapists, what can fill our soul is being in a musical community with others, whether that's performing in a band or listening to music with other people or just jamming, sharing songs, whatever that is for you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I know for different chunks of time, my participation ebbs and flows, but I play in the praise band at my church, for example. So there's a drummer, there's a keyboardist, a piano player, and a guy who plays an iwi, which is one of those electronic wind instruments. And they're, none of them are music therapists, but all are relative levels of professional trained. And so we get together and we rehearse and, worship together, and it's fun, and it's a totally different context of music. So like music therapy is not even remotely on my mind. The music's not even remotely the same. It's like a completely different sphere, a completely different community, and yet music's still happening.
Well, do you have any last bits of advice for music therapists or maybe even music educators out there, anyone involved in the music profession?
Find a way to play. It's up to you. But there is a community. Out there, there's people playing every day. There's a lot of ways to plug in and play. So find a way to play.
Well, thank you so much, Tim, for being on the podcast. It was great talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Angela.
You can listen to more podcast episodes on iTunes, SoundCloud, or on our website, musictherapyandwellnesshub.com. That's musictherapyandwellnesshub.com. We'll see you next time.